Another claim that's made, and this is why we go to you, so you tell me whether this is a worthwhile claim. Another claim that is made is that the dynamics of this race are so wacky that determining who is really validly considered a likely voter is more difficult than ever. And so likely voter doesn't tell us something we need to know because we don't really have a good sense of who's likely to vote.
Wrong, I would say. I
Okay.
mean, we have.
In this video, David Pakman completely destroys an election analyst for her insane takes. Rachel Bitecofer comes in acting like she's got the 2024 race all figured out, but Pakman just isn't buying it from her. From her bizarre confidence in polling to her wild claims about immigration and voter turnout, she throws out some seriously shaky takes. Pakman just pushes her though, exposing the flaws in her logic and just showing why these narratives just don't hold up. So make sure to watch till the end to see how David Pakman destroys an election analyst for her insane takes.
Like this idea that the electorate is changing and Trump brought in all these new people in 16 and maybe he's doing it now, right? Those things are really overstated, as are these day-to-day changes in the polls, which, you know, of course, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, New York Times, all of them treat them as changes in the race, not changes in a survey moving from one to the other, right? And so this is another area that is really misreported and mishandled by media. So, you know,
so you have no concern that the issue with the polls is they're not really figuring out who's likely to vote. You're comfortable with that aspect of the methodology.
I am, but here's where the uncertainty is going to enter. And like I put out a tweet about this. Now I've been doing weekly election analysis. So if you haven't subscribed to my Substack, you need to go and do that so that you're not following these polls every day and having freakouts. Okay. So you understand how to look at the rest of the data, because there's a lot of hard data that we can look at and other things that are not head-to-head horse race within the margin of error surveys. So you should go and do that. But where the uncertainty is, and I said why I'm not predicting something more specific than toss-up advantage Harris, and this is 3 or 4 days ago on Twitter, is because there are so many completely unprecedented elements happening this cycle. We've never had an incumbent president who lost and then staged an insurrection, but lost, come back and try to run again the next cycle, right? We've never had the nominee switch in July like that, especially not in the modern era, maybe historically when it was a different system, right? We've never had a female Black nominee. And I'm here to tell you guys, America's racist as fuck, okay? It is a racist country. This election, if it goes against us, it will be because of migrants, okay? Like 63% of people want to do mass deportations.
Rachel throws out a bold claim right off the bat, basically dismissing the idea that Trump is bringing in new voters and insisting that polling shifts are just media hype. And look, she's partially right about media overstating daily poll swings, but her confidence in the electorate not changing, that's just shaky at best. Then she launches into a self-promo rant about her Substack. Like, come on, Pakman's asking a real question, and instead of answering it directly, she's plugging her newsletter. It's like she's more focused on selling a take than defending it. And when she finally gets to her point, it's just a flood of uncertainty. Everything is unprecedented, everything is impossible to predict, and yet somehow she's still sure Harris has the edge. Rachel's whole approach is just all over the place. One second she's saying everything is unpredictable, then the next she's making sweeping statements like this. Pakman's letting her talk for now, but you can already see where he's about to pick this apart.
You're not saying you would blame the migrants, just to be clear. You're saying it would be because of antipathy towards migrants.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. It's the antipathy. Well, I mean, I'm also blaming the idea of letting 6 million migrants in for a year, guys, okay? Because like in our little liberal fantasy bubbles in LA and San Fran and DC, there's no such thing as an illegal and everyone's a human, okay? In the rest of America, we're about to see liberal, small L liberal democracy collapse because you can't have 6 million people cross a border in a year, guys.
So you agree that's a real issue, the way Republicans say
yes.
it is. Yeah,
okay. And unlike us, it's their number one issue. So like if I was giving speeches to Republicans, I would say to them, what's the one issue Democrats don't want to talk about? Now, I do a version of this for my speeches, which are, of course, to Democrats. And I say to that audience, because I can't get people to understand this, no matter how many times I try to push it, what is the one thing Republicans don't want to talk about this cycle? And they know it's abortion, right? And I'm like, why aren't we talking about it incessantly then, right? And so on their side, if I was doing that speech to the audience, I'd say, what's the one thing Democrats don't want to talk about? The room would yell back, immigration, right? And so they have centered their campaign strategy around that, which has a true salience. And I'm going to tell you, in that 63% of people who wanted mass deportations of the migrants, it was like 40% of Democrats, okay?
Pause. Are you getting tired of getting news from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite? How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, whether it's left, right, or center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get a 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights in media bias and political trends. So stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.
You don't get to 63 without some Democrats, okay? And then the other issue is trans. So like if you have been following their advertising strategy, which of course I have been, and has predominantly focused on men, okay? And we can talk about that as an unknown in a second, right? But it's predominantly focused on men. And what's the argument? They're all about how Kamala got sex offender in prison, a gender transition surgery, okay? And the closed line is she's with they, them, and it shows scary trans people, and he's with you. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, in our world, they'd be like, well, what's the most important issue? Well, abortion's not the most important issue. We shouldn't talk about it. Okay. Well, trans rights, I'm here to tell you now, on no surveys is the number one issue to people.
Right.
But they made it the number one issue, and it's a very effective wedge. So, what people want is a certainty that we cannot provide, because when we're talking about presidential elections, we're talking about an N size of like 38 total cases. There's like been 38, elections, right? There's only one every 4 years in the modern era, right? You don't have this big data set. And to have so many known unknowns going on, it makes it very difficult to predict. But the other thing is not so much trying to figure out who the likely voter is going to look like. Now we can anticipate that. So like Trump's strategy is has really gone all in on writing off women, basically, JD Vance, right? And focusing on men. And their theory of the case is we're going to radicalize men on trans and immigration issues, and we'll get low propensity voters to show up and vote, right? They're going to come out and vote. Well, the problem is to see that happen first, you have to see a registration boom in the data, because most of our states, you have to register in advance to vote.
And now Rachel just completely loses the plot, claiming liberal democracy is collapsing because of migration. That's just straight up Fox News rhetoric. Then when Pakman asks if she agrees with Republicans on immigration, she just flat out says yes. She's not wrong that it's a major issue, but framing it like this is just wild. Then she claims Trump is writing off women to radicalize men. But the key part, she admits that there's no data proving it. So why act like it's a fact? Instead of making a clear case, Rachel's just throwing out takes with no backup. Pakman's just letting her dig her own hole at this point, and you can tell he's about to tear this apart.
Let me ask you a question about that specifically to Pennsylvania. There are Republicans gleefully claiming that they have an advantage in new registrations in Pennsylvania, and that given how close it was in 2020, that's it. On the other hand, you have some Democrats saying early ballot submissions favor Democrats. That's it. And it's obvious that it's Kamala Harris who's going to win Pennsylvania. Is either of these tea leaf readings valuable?
No, I mean, early vote and vote by mail used to be valuable until Donald Trump went and told his side of the electorate that early voting and vote by mail was fraud. I mean, he did that all through 2020, and it changed mass voter behavior, not just a little bit, but significantly. We saw huge drop-offs of Republicans doing that, and it was pervasive. It lasted, through 22, we saw that still, right? So now it's noisy data, right? And it's a shame, because it was a nice hard data point. Now, in terms of their claims about registration, the registration deadline just passed, and I'm waiting with data. It takes time for all that to be processed, but we'll be looking again. I had Tom Bonnier from Target Smart, which your audience probably is familiar with, Tom and Simon Rosenberg. pulled the registration data a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, just tell me this one answer. I just want to know this. If their theory of the case is that they're going to motivate more men than ever to come and vote Trump, then they have to have there should be a boom in registrations for men. Okay. And it's not there. It wasn't there in the initial run of data. And I can't say for sure it's not going to be there until I get this second, run of the analysis after registration is closed. Right. It's closed now. But my guess is it's not going to be there, guys. And the reason is, when Steve Bannon told Donald Trump, don't worry about suburban women, we can win this election without them, I was like, oh, as a trained political scientist, I'm like, oh, so your theory is you're going to get people who don't vote to show up and vote. Well, you have fun with that, because that is the hardest thing in electoral politics to do. Half of the country, again, half of our fellow citizens, when you're in the mall, maybe not if you live in LA or San Fran or some major city, okay? But if you live anywhere else, you go into a mall, half the people you walk by do not vote. They don't vote and they don't care. And they're proud of not voting.
Wrapping this up, Rachel's takes were just all over the place. She parroted Republican rhetoric, contradicted herself, and threw out bold claims with no data to back them up. Pakman just let her talk, but it was clear she wasn't making a solid case at all. Instead of offering a real strategy, she just fed into right-wing talking points. Anyways, if you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below.